Namaste dear students and welcome to the virtual learning of SLV English Medium School. In the previous videos, we had seen the first lesson in the first unit, that is, the snake and the mirror. In the wit and humor section, we have another beautiful poem, The Duck and the Kangaroo. The poem, The Duck and the Kangaroo, was written by a very well-known and one of the most famous and renowned poet, Mr. Edward Lear, who was born in 1812 and died in 1888. He was a British artist, illustrator, author, and poet, renowned today primarily for his literary nonsense in poetry and prose. Mr. Edward Lear was very well known for his wit and humor that he applies in his writings. In his childhood, he suffered from ill health. After a long decline in health, he died of heart disease. His principal areas of work as an artist were threefold: as a draughtsman employed to illustrate birds and animals, making colored drawings during his journeys. As an author, Lear is principally known for his popular nonsense works, rather than as a travel writer. These show a great ability to use with relish the sound of real and invented English words. The poem The Duck and the Kangaroo is a poem with a touch of light humor. So dear students, I feel very proud to introduce to you all one of the most renowned, multi-talented writer, illustrator, artist, cartoonist, that's Mr. Edward Lear. Mr. Edward Lear is one of those writers who is very much loved by children. Children were always fond of Edward Lear for his humorous and funny paintings as well as writings. So the poem The Duck and the Kangaroo has been studied across the globe by students from many generations who have been very much fond of the humorous touch that Lear gave to it. So dear students, I urge you all to open your textbooks and look into this very beautiful poem, which is very humorous as well as joy to learn. So without further delay, we start reading and learning the poem The Duck and the Kangaroo. Before we begin reading the poem, we'll try to understand the backdrop, the scenario, the context in which the poem is written. Have you ever imagined animals talking? In the recent cartoons and movies, you have been seeing animals conversing and talking, having a dialogue with each other. How beautiful it would be to see a duck and a kangaroo discuss something very interesting. Duck, which is often found in a pond and sees nothing else than the pond, wishes to see the entire world. And a kangaroo, which is known for hopping around and going about all throughout the world, is trying to give a ride to the duck. The duck has the desire to see the beauties of the world, the mountains, rivers, trees, animals, fish, birds, all around the globe. And it is requesting the kangaroo to give him a ride. Now the question is the kangaroo going to take the duck on a ride around the world? If so, what are the conditions? And is the duck ready to accept the conditions of the kangaroo? What happened when kangaroo agrees or disagrees? And what happens when kangaroo places whether the duck accepts those restrictions and proceeds on the ride? And how did they go about? What was the ride? All these questions are very soon going to be answered in the poem The Duck and the Kangaroo. For the clarity's sake, I'll just read out the poem from the beginning to the end, and then I'll try to explain the poem line by line, and at the end we'll try to chant the poem musically. The duck and the kangaroo. Said the duck to the kangaroo, "Good gracious, how you hop over the fields and the water too, as if you never would stop. My life is a bore in this nasty pond, and I long to go out in the world beyond. I wish I could hop like you," said the duck to the kangaroo. "Please give me a ride on your back," said the duck to the kangaroo. "I would sit quite still and say nothing but quack the whole of the long day through, and we'd go to the Dee and the Jelly Bolly, over the land and over the sea. Please take me a ride, oh do," said the duck to the kangaroo. Said the kangaroo to the duck, "This requires some little reflection. Perhaps on the whole it might bring me luck. And there seems but one objection, which is, if you let me speak so bold, your feet are unpleasantly wet and cold, and would probably give me the rheumatiz," said the kangaroo. Said the duck, "As I sat on the rocks, I've thought over that completely, and I bought 4 pairs of worsted socks, which fit my web feet neatly. And to keep out the cold, I've bought a clock, and every day a cigar I'll smoke, all to follow my own dear true love of a kangaroo." Said the kangaroo, "I am ready, all in the moonlight pale, but to balance me well, dear duck, sit steady, and quite at the end of my tail." So away they went with a hop and a bound, and they hopped the whole world 3 times round. And who so happy or who as the duck and the kangaroo, written by Edward Lear. Explanation: The duck and the kangaroo. In the first stanza, the duck is comparing her situation with that of kangaroo, and also is expressing her desire to go around the world with the help of the kangaroo. And the duck is also trying to convince kangaroo to help her see the whole world. In this first stanza, the words you need to be learning are "good gracious," which is an expression of surprise. "How you hop." Hop would mean jumping. "Over the fields and the water too, as if you never would stop. My life is a bore in this nasty pond." Nasty, which means dirty. "And I long to go out in the world beyond." I long to. The word long means desire. I wish I could hop like you, said the duck to the kangaroo. So in the first stanza, duck is comparing the lifestyle of hers with that of the kangaroo. Duck is got to live in the same pond all her life, whereas the kangaroo has got the provision of hopping around wherever it wanted. So the duck is expressing her longing to hop around the world and is requesting kangaroo to help her. Please give me a ride on your back, said the duck to the kangaroo. I would sit quite still and say nothing but quack the whole of the long day through, and we'd go to the Dee and the Jelly Bolly, over the land and over the sea. Please take me a ride, oh do, said the duck to the kangaroo. In the second stanza, in this particular stanza, the duck is continuing to express her desire to the kangaroo, saying, please do not hesitate to take me on a ride. Please help me to see the whole world beyond. I will not speak, I will not disturb. I will sit at the end of your tail and say nothing, absolutely nothing, but quack. I would remain silent and will not irritate you. And here we come across the word Dee and the Jelly Bolly. So Dee and the Jelly Bolly is an imaginary place where one is believed to be happy in a heaven-like atmosphere. Dee and the Jelly Bolly is an imaginary place where there is happiness and nothing else. And we'd go over the land and over the sea. Please take me a ride or two, said the duck to the kangaroo. Said the kangaroo to the duck. After duck expressed her desire to see the whole world beyond, now the kangaroo is speaking to the duck. What is kangaroo saying? Look at the third stanza. This requires some little reflection. Reflection means thinking. The kangaroo is speaking to the duck saying, okay, let's see. But before I accept your request, I need to think over. I need to reflect. Perhaps, which means maybe, on the whole it might bring me luck. So the kangaroo is trying to figure out there is something good happening when kangaroo is helping the duck. And there seems but one objection. Objection, which means a hurdle, a block, a challenge. Now, the kangaroo is saying, everything is fine, but there is one small objection. And what is it? Which is, if you let me speak so bold. Bold means courage. Your feet are unpleasantly wet and cold. As you know, duck always lives in water, and its feet are very wet and cold because it's always found in the water. So the kangaroo is expressing her objection, her discomfort, saying, your feet are unpleasantly wet and cold. Unpleasantly means very bad, and would probably give me the rheumatiz. Now, rheumatiz is a sickness that affects your bones when you live for a very long time in the cold places. So the kangaroo is expressing her objection, the only objection, saying, your feet are unpleasantly wet and cold, dear duck, and I am afraid I might get the disease rheumatiz because you'll always be on my back when I take you to the world beyond, and I would fall sick with the disease rheumatiz. So that's the only objection, and that's the only thing that concerns me when I think of taking you on a ride. Now, duck is replying to kangaroo. As I sat on the rocks, means stones, as I sat on the stones, I've thought over that completely. Thought over what kangaroo had spoken about duck's feet being wet and cold. And I bought 4 pairs of worsted socks. So, after listening to the objection of the kangaroo, the duck bought 4 pairs of socks which fit my webbed feet neatly. If you had ever looked at the feet of the duck, it is in the shape of a web. So she bought socks that fit her feet very neatly. And to keep out the cold, I've bought a clock. And also to protect herself from the cold, she also bought a clock. Clock means a coat. And every day a cigar I'll smoke. So the duck also had collected some cigars or cigarettes to keep herself away from cold. The duck also decided to smoke every day, all to follow my own dear true love of a kangaroo. So the duck is doing all this, buying socks, clock, cigars, all these things to follow her true love, that is kangaroo. After that, the kangaroo is saying, I'm ready, all in the moonlight pale. I'm ready in the bright light of moon. But to balance me well, dear duck, sit steady. So now the kangaroo is being very precautionous, saying, when I am hopping, to keep my balance, you should be sitting steady. Steady means being still without moving, and quiet at the end of my tail, and also be quiet so as not to distract me. So away they went with a hop and a bound. So they went away around the world with a hop and a bound. They're jumping around and going around the world. And they hopped the whole world 3 times round. And they went around the world 3 times. And who so happy, oh who, as the duck and the kangaroo. So these romantic couple, the duck and the kangaroo, fell in love with each other and accepted each other and went around the world 3 times. And who can be so happy as the duck and the kangaroo is the question that Mr. Edward Lear asks all of us. So dear students, I hope you've understood the poem. It's a very simple yet subtle humor that is mixed in the poem, and I hope you've enjoyed reading and understanding the poem. I request you all to listen to the reading of the poem as many times as possible and practice so as to avoid your mistakes in the pronunciation and the fashion of reading the poem.